We'll be opening the floor to take questions from the audience. I'm sure there are many reflections and questions, so please, the floor is now yours, dear audience. Who would like to begin? Really? I was worried we'd have to extend the time. Okay, maybe we'll go to what we're hearing on, do we? Okay. Oh, okay. I'm getting old, I don't see. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Zora Yermesh, and I'm here representing Ericsson, a telecom company from Sweden. My question is for our distinguished speakers, how do you see the role of the private sector from your perspective, if I may? Thank you.
Thank you for cracking my mind. I said that the point that I didn't raise is the private sector. Whatever we decide and what we call the blue zone is the green zone is going to implement. And definitely, even we're talking about education as a global common good. So it's also private sector. You have private universities. So I think it's private business as well. But how are we making the linkages between long-term vision and thinking and budgetizing? Because taking your segment of telco, I do know that you had to train your own people because universities couldn't do it. And I think that private sectors always has one step ahead and that we should bring them aboard. Taking my own expertise within the renewable energy, I needed to train the people to grow my business. It's a must. Actually, it's not that we really need to. And thank you for raising that point. And definitely, it's part of the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you for that. The other question? Yes, go ahead.
Hello, I'm also from the private sector. It's a very interesting topic for us from the private sector because it connects directly to our own pipeline of talent. My question is in relation to something connected to what you just shared, Madam Speaker, about industry-recognized training programs and whether we're moving more towards that and recognizing that we probably don't have to put young people through a 3-year course to be able to get a job at the end. What can we do to mobilize more private sector partners to create these type of very specific, focused learning opportunities that connects directly to jobs? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so of course the education is common will, common good. Okay, so in order to achieve the SDGs, and we have to work closely through the PPP models, right? Public partnership model. Okay, so now is big challenges. I think this is global challenge, how we can make a better, proper balance between the skill demand and the skill supply. Okay, this is a really big challenge. Okay, so then we are living now in an uncertainty area. Okay, so we are trying to teach the kids generation will work, will live after 20 years, 30 years, then is nobody knows, and then what skill can be sustainable. Okay, so means, as I mentioned earlier, my conversation, my speech, and there is the better to understand what is real trend, the need of the skill, they call the meta skill. Okay, so then in this regard, of course, the employees, they play a major role because learners, employees, and education institutions, triangle cooperation, collaboration is better. Once we have better and close cooperations based on the PPP models, and then definitely we have better and proper the skill development system worldwide. Thank you.
Yes, very short. I think, of course, we have to collaborate with the private sector, and not only in terms of having private universities, but collaborating in terms of that the private sector has, of course, in the long life learning demands, and universities, for example, can collaborate with, for example, in the European Union, we have now the debate with micro-credentials, no? With short titles that are very related to concrete needs. And this is something that universities can supply, and also with professors coming from the private sector. So I think there's a great opportunity of this collaboration, not only in terms of having private universities, but incorporating the private sector in the long life learning that universities can also improve.
Yes, I would agree. Clearly, the private sector is key as a partner to ensure lifelong learning, and with the demands that the private sector has in terms of skills and a skilled labor force who has the right technical abilities. I think what I was trying to share before was that we recently, in my own country, actually the private sector, the employers' organizations, together with the trade unions and the government, like a triangle, have decided that workers can take 1 year off and keeping 80% of their salaries, keeping their jobs, but for training, to reskill and upskill, for instance, on digital technologies, green technologies, and moving out of a job which maybe becomes obsolete through the technological changes that are happening, but actually acquiring the skills of the new jobs that are required by the private sector. So there are possible models here. And clearly the private sector is key as a key actor in these solutions.
Thank you. I would like to say two things to our private sector colleagues in the room. Highly successful, adaptive, innovative companies inevitably invest in the training of their workforce and are conscious more than anyone else of the way in which skill needs are changing and evolving. But I would ask you to do one other thing. I would ask you to work in industry and sector groupings to share that learning with the education system, with the government through the public education system, so that it is possible for TVET providers to update their skills regularly and ensure that the curricula and pedagogy that they offer is of the most advanced and the most appropriate for the coming years ahead. It is too easy for education to fall behind times, and the only way to prevent that is for you as industry and sector representatives to take your role seriously of sharing that learning and helping the education system to keep pace with evolving change.
Thank you. We have room for one more question. I'll be fair to this side of the room.
Thank you. We heard in the last panel about the urgency of addressing the climate crisis and about the role of education in mitigation and adaptation. I want to ask this panel as well, what concrete outcomes do you think this track of tests can have for quality education in the time of climate crisis?
So I don't want to break the protocol, but I'm for gender balance, and this would be interesting to have a man also asking a question. So that will be just for your question. Can you repeat a little bit? Can you come back to your question? What? But the outcome is just get out of your seat and start implementing, doing the work, walking the talk. I think that we have great example from Sweden how to do. We had the private sector is ready to come. We have the West Africa Solar Park creating 15 million jobs in West Africa. We are doing. So just join us, come and do the work. And we also welcome the the financial side as well to come on board and to finance, walking the talk, not only on paper, but to definitely go and push the wheel, and also to our politicians, to our parliamentarians, to take the policy measures in the parliaments to allow the implementation. That's what I will, I hope I answered to your question. Otherwise, we continue off.
Perfect. And to be fair, gentleman over here.
Thanks. My name is Arash. I'm with UNHCR. Thanks, panelists, for the great contribution. Talking about learning, work, and sustainable development, how do we make sure through inclusion by all the actors happens for refugees, especially making sure that not only they have access to learnings, but fair work and sustainable development? Thanks.
Sharing mics.
Okay. No, this is, of course, a very important issue. No? Refugees is not only a crisis that we have now, it's unfortunately a permanent crisis. And here, as far I'm talking always about universities, so I come from the Ministry of Universities of Spain. No? Here, of course, again, the potential of universities is very important, not only in terms of access to education for refugees, and there we have big challenges, no? Passport for refugees, etc., but also in terms of connecting these activities with the students, with the national students, or students that are not asylum seekers or are not refugees, but they work with this idea of inclusion. No? I think this is something, again, very important. And we have not only to think about students, no? We have also professors, we have also university staff with their needs. And here the challenge is how to integrate professors and university staff within our high education institutions. No? And I think that now we have an opportunity, no? Because the focus is on the crisis of Ukraine. There are more funds that on other occasions. Now we can use this not only to address this problem, but also to think about this as a real, unfortunately, but a permanent challenge that universities have.
Thank you for that. And I think I would really encourage you to continue engaging with Action Track 2 and the consultations around that and the technical documents. There's also the framework for global education transformation proposed by Dubai Cares and the Action Track 2. I'd like to thank every one of our esteemed panelists whose insights have left us inspired and energized. And putting it all together, I believe we have a roadmap for action towards transforming education. We heard the critical elements necessary to do it. We've heard incredible examples of concrete action that we're already doing. And we've heard about the various components that need to be part of the system. And we've heard the voices of our youth, and it was loud and clear. The time is now to move out of our silos. Today's discussion will feed into Action Track 2, presented by Her Excellency Ms. Maria Victoria Gonzalez, the Minister of National Education, Colombia, at the plenary session. Updates from the Thematic Action Track sessions and the way ahead, held later today in Room 1 at 3:45 Paris time. And the key points raised during this particular session will also be reflected in the final draft of the Action Track 2 discussion paper, which will be submitted by the 15th of July to inform the summit in New York later this year.